Hello and welcome to another Random Code stream. Let me get the music going in the background. All right, so first thing I want to do in this stream is talk a little bit about this refactoring that I've been working on for rocks. I've actually done a significant amount of work off camera this week, and most of it was trying to figure out some subtleties, some things that I was struggling with to get to actually work correctly. Spacing was a big thing, a whole bunch of stuff. So I want to go through that just to explain where the refactoring is right now. So to show it and just demo it, you'll see that while I already have the attribute up here at the top of this file, if I come down to this type definition, you'll see that if I do the control dot, I get add rock definition, and I can say create and make. That's the first option that you're given. And everything's fully qualified now. You'll notice that in the code there, I don't put usings in or anything like that because it starts getting into a big mess of exactly why I didn't do that with the generated code in rocks. I used to try to do usings and it was a nightmare. So I decided to fully qualify everything here. I guess I could put global ... in front, but that's a different story. But you're like, why is that here? I mean, why am I being offered it if it's already here? Well, if I hit and accept, you'll now notice that when I do it, I don't get the refactoring. And the reason why is because it's put in this file. And so this is something I'm going to have to update the docs on just a little bit to emphasize this as a best practice. What I think you should do is have a file that you put all of these in. Okay. But if you look at the project file itself, you'll notice I have this rocks attribute file property, and that's visible to the compiler using compiler visible property. So if you add this in and this in, what the refactoring will do, it will look for that file within the project. And if it can find it, that's where it's going to put the attribute definition. And as you just saw, if that attribute definition exists for the type that you want to mock, it won't offer it again. So that should significantly make it simpler. Of course, it's something that is not easily discoverable either, but it will be in the docs. I did already put some docs in there to talk about that. God darn it. Forgot to turn the audio on. Oh well. Now there's soothing-ish music in the background. So anyway, this is docked, and I will emphasize that I think the best thing to do is to make a file and put all your attributes there. That's what I've been doing just by hand because I think it's cleaner that way. Now, one thing it won't do is check if it's actually a type that can be mocked. So when I hit control period here, I get that ability to do that. If I come back over to this mock file, of course it's not saved yet, because this is something that's changed in Visual Studio as of recently. Now when I save it, you notice that the analyzer is probably going to kick in, and there it went. And now what it's telling you is, well, I can't do this. I can't actually make that type. So that just became a time thing. I think I have that in the list. I really hope I do have that in the list. Yes, here. So this is something that I do not have in the 910 milestone, but it is something that I want to do, which is to have another project that I call like Rocks Compilation. And it's something that analysis and completions could share. So if there's any code that needs to be shared between those two, like the models, to determine if this is a type that I could actually mock, then I could offer that up as well. So that's something I'm also going to put in the documentation and tell people, hey, refactoring is not smart enough yet to determine if you can mock it, but that will be added in a future version. So, and an analyzer will pick that up anyway. So yeah. So yeah, the refactoring is done now. It all works, and that's all good. Let's do this, and clear that out. Okay. If you don't put that property in the project file, then what will happen is it will just put it here and use the file that you're actually in to put the attribute in. That actually made me think a little bit about the fact of duplication. That's possible that you could have these attributes within your code, and the generator is smart enough to only generate the mock stuff for a target type once. It just handles that. But that's done in the code generation part. In the part where you're actually looking at the attribute definition and determining can it be mocked and creating the model there, I could also be a little bit smarter and say, when I get a list of attributes that the compiler has told me exists in the project, or however it's handling that, look at the symbols that are being given for this. And if I've already run into that symbol for a particular build type, don't do that again either. You don't even need to make the model. So it's a very, very minor improvement, but it's something that I could do to be even a little bit better about not doing any kind of duplicate work. So in any event, typically when I have just attributes that I have to add, add in a project that, that are at the assembly level, I'll make a file and put them there because they really don't tie to a type, which is usually what I have as a file here, and I have a type defined in my project. So yeah, refactoring's done. It will be in 9.10, and there's a couple of improvements that will be coming in the future. But as a user of this, and again, I've used Rocks now where I work as my day job, this will be something that will be very, very helpful, because once you get that set up in the project file, that property, then anytime you run into something, you can actually, like here, I could say, this is kind of freaky, I could say var expectations equals new I suppress value and return type. Now that's actually not legal. Oh. Well, I found a bug. Live coding. When I was typing, close. In so somewhere within this find parent symbol, I got to be a little bit more defensive. Cool. I'll work on that later. We'll enable it again. The point is I say new I suppress value type and return. If I hit, oh really? Is it because this is an error actually? If I say enable again. Yeah, let's enable it. If I come down here, it'll work. Okay, so there's something, the intent here is you could actually type the name of a, yeah, let me get rid of that. That's just causing problems. You could type the name of a object creation expression, or like an interface in there as an object creation expression. And even though that's wrong, Rocks would still pick up on it and go, oh, you want to create a mock for this? Yippee, I'll do that. And then you could just continue on once that's saved with this create expectations, but that's not quite working right. So I'll figure out that later. I'll figure that out later. But I definitely need to fix that for 9.10. Glad I actually did this stream. because I hadn't really tried that yet. And I want to make sure that this works rather well, that it doesn't fail like that. That would be bad. Even if I was just typing, like, let's just say I had something that was valid. Like I say public class mockable, and then I have public virtual void do. Okay. And what's the problem here? Do something. Jesus. Okay, so now if I say var exp is equal to a new mockable. Okay. Now, you'll notice that the refactoring didn't fail. And it does offer it here, which is cool. Okay. So I say create and make. And now create, that's actually what I want to see with the interface too. Okay. So it does work. So let's put that in my notes too. Note that if I had a class and I typed, well, now that's there, so let's get rid of that so I can repeat it. So even though this is an error because I haven't closed it off, if I hit dot here, it's because that's an identifier name. It's an identifier name syntax. And so that works. Yeah. Smallish bug, but I'll figure that out later. I don't want to do that right now. So, yeah, I am happy with this. I am happy with this. This works rather well. So one of the things that I discovered actually last night as I was cleaning up some of the things with the refactoring, let me actually get into the refactoring itself so I can show you some of the things that I've been doing with it. So one of the things is adding in this option to go look for that build property. This is the syntax you have to use to find it. And if I do find it, then I change everything to point over to that document, its root, its model, when I add the refactoring. So this finds that mock type symbol within the document I'm on. That I have to do. But then I will switch over to the other document if you've configured it that way. And then the add rock attribute, you'll notice now that I'm creating a whole bunch of syntax factory stuff. This was something I was struggling with in terms of spacing, putting a new line before or after and all this stuff, and it was becoming a nightmare. And so I posted to the Discord channel. There's a bunch of Discord, a couple Discord servers that Microsoft folks are on. And I'm like, how do I handle this trivia? And somebody said, just use Syntax Factory. So there's a great site called Rosalind Quoter. And what you can do in here, if I come back to my code, you just type in any code. It doesn't have to be referenced or anything. I'm sorry for the bright white screen. That's just the way it works. And then you can just say generate the code and it does it for you. This is an awesome site. If you do anything with Rosalind, this is a tool to keep in mind. You don't have to use it a lot per se, but man, is this nice to have around. rosalindquoter.azurewebsites.net. So this gives you a whole bunch of things to go, how do I actually get this to generate this way? And the thing to notice is with all of this being built with the syntax factory things is when I add it to the attribute list, that's the attribute list to the root of the document, everything just gets spaced out correctly. It just all works. And that's because somebody at Microsoft told me that they'll handle it as elastic trivia, which means I interpret it as a stretch and move things around based on how the document is defined so it looks okay. So this is a whole bunch of code that's not easily readable, but it works. One thing also that I had to do is to actually get the name of the type in the type of expression. I had to create this extension method here that does a whole, and I won't go through all this, but it basically builds up the name of a type fully qualified. And if it's generic, it will do the less than commas, if it needs them, greater than symbol. And it will handle that correctly. So yeah, that's nice. It took a while to figure out how to get this to work, but now it does. So that's good. So yeah, so the refactoring's all in place. That all works. I now have another example. If anything, this is nice for when I do talks. I want to talk about Roslyn. I now have a refactoring example that I can show people and learn, and also show how you do testing. Testing was another thing that took a while to get correctly. Figuring out, for example, how do I, if I have multiple, this took a while to figure out. If I create number of fixed sources, what you have to do is have a code action index. And so that index says this is the first one that was offered, this was the second one that was offered, and so on. And that was not obvious at first. Somebody had to point that out to go, that's how you can determine what the fixed code looks like. So this is saying this is the source, this is what you're starting with, and this is where your cursor is, or your then you want to refactor on this. In this case, it will turn out to be a class definition, and it'll try to create it for mockable. And the fixed source would be, it puts it in there like this. So now I have an example to show how you can use, if I go in here, how I can use this C# code refactoring test, which comes from Microsoft, and get that to work correctly. And I also, somebody helped me figure out with, if I want to have that build property in there, one way to do it is you can actually create an editor config, which will put the property in there, but it ends up being the same thing from your code's perspective. So that's kind of nice, because then you can actually put in a test to say, if I wanted that build property in play, which that's what this true is setting, then you'll notice that I have both a source file and a mock definitions file. And so when I fix it, the original source doesn't change, but that attribute definition is put into the fixed source. So, and then you can name them as files here, and then it also works as well. So I'm doing all this just to review the work I've done in the past couple streams, but also just to show people, if you were wondering how to do anything with refactorings, hopefully this is an example that you can use to look at not only how do you create them, but how do you test them as well. So before I get into fixing a bug, which I just found, I also want to just show here real quick on the right, the project settings, or the project setup, I should say. One thing I didn't realize when I did this whole project refactoring, no pun intended, because I couldn't have the refactoring in the same project as the project that contains the analyzers, the generator, and so on, and the suppressor. We still have a suppressor. And when I refactored everything, pulled it all out, and had my project file now set up correctly, so it puts everything in the package correctly, that all works. Figured that all works. But for whatever reason, I put the things that you need to actually reference in a project called Rocks Runtime. What that had the effect of, and I didn't notice right away, is that was going to cause a major breaking change for users, because all these things like build type was going to be in Rocks Runtime. The rock attribute was going to be in Rocks Runtime, and that was going to be bad. That was going to be really, really bad. And I said, wait a minute, no, I don't want to break people that way. So what I did yesterday, and this actually turned out not to be too much to change, is to make the Rocks project Rocks package. And so this is the one that creates the package. And you just have the package ID as Rocks. And so it'll create rocks.910 nupkeg or whatever that is. and it puts everything in there correctly. I've already tested this. This all works. I'm using a local NuGet server. And then Rocks runtime became Rocks. And then everything referenced. Yeah, I had to change all the references in the project. By the way, thank God that there's this new SolutionX format, because if I go into here and I look at, well, we'll do this. Yeah, here's a Rocks one. This is so much easier to edit. So much easier to edit than a SLN format. I can't emphasize enough how much I'm so happy that they have added this format in. Calling it SLNX with the X in it, I don't know. I don't know why. I don't care. I can now go into the solution file and edit it and do the paths and everything else. It's so much good. If you've ever needed to do this, where you need to change something in a solution and you've opened up the SLN file in a text editor, you're like, what the hell is this? There's these GUIDs, there's project end project. It's just a mess. And it's this format that's been around for decades. And now they finally created this format, and I'm so happy, because this made it much easier to reorder, restructure, change things around. Now, I don't know why, by the way, sometimes it's still putting in this ID here for some of these projects. I don't know why. I keep removing them and it keeps putting them back in. I don't think those should be necessary because you don't reference them anywhere else, but whatever. Just the pure fact that you can edit this like a text file. Now, you can't do it yet in Visual Studio directly, and I'm not sure if they're going to ever allow that, but it's fine-ish. Yeah, I can go in here and change things around, but this is such a great step for them to do that. And so I reordered everything, restructured everything, and so now this is the final step. This won't cause me to do a 10.0 release and cause everybody to change their code when this got released. I'm really happy I picked up on that last night. It wasn't obvious right away, and I was about to do something that was going to make people very, very unhappy with this. So, yay, I caught that. So, yippee. All right. So, where are we at? For 9.1.0, which I want to get to soonish. I want to get this released. If I go to the milestones here, and I go to 9.1.0, there's now a couple things here. This duplicate attribute declarations, that's the thing I talked about. If you have multiple rock attribute definitions of the same type, I want to address that there. Bring back rock repository. I will be doing this in a future episode, which I used to have this thing called rock repository. And so you could create the mock stuff off of this repository. Over time, I removed this because of a whole bunch of reasons, and I forget why, but part of it was when I changed to using attributes to do the mock declarations, it just didn't work well with rock repository anymore. But I thought about it, I'm like, I think it actually would now. If I sketched something out, and then I thought, you could make the mock, have a using with the dispose, say create what it's already there, and then you just do your expectations normally, and then the repository gets dispose called on it, which will call verify on each of the expectations. So that becomes much cleaner. You just add a line of code here to remove a line to do verify, and there is an analyzer, CA 2002 or something like that, that will look for objects that you haven't called dispose on because they're disposable. And so it's an end of wash code. I mean, you have to put in a tiny bit more code on a line here, but then you don't have to remember to call verify, and this will automatically do it for you. I have a issue here as a feature where I wanted to add in disposable to all the expectations. This will get rid of that feature because it'll all be done this way. I think this is much cleaner. I will have to change something with the expectations because the constructors are internal. So this might become a problem because I wanted it to be where you pass in something that is of that type and can be created. So the visibility of the constructor may need to be tweaked a little bit. and I need to make sure that works. I could say, well, you give me an expectation instance, and then the way that would work is you do an add. We'll see. I might also call this rock context, because if I do anything with static abstract members, I need a way to say this test started here and this test finished here. And anything you create with expectations, because of how I think I might handle this, I need to have a way to say clean things up, because static stuff is going to be shared across tests, although I think I can handle it with async local. But I need a way to say, when did the test finish? And so those things can be cleaned up. So this might be a good landing point to make that happen. So I might call this rock context, but that's another feature that I'll be working on in a future episode. This validate one is also something. This is an easy one, update test. I won't do this. It's making sure that my test projects are actually using the new testing platform stuff. And I did that months ago. It felt a little buggy when I was debugging tests. They didn't seem to work correctly, but now all that's officially released, and I've been using it on my projects at work, and it seems to be working just fine. So that'll be something I want to change too. So hopefully I'm getting closer, but I also just found another bug. I really want to get done by, I'd say if I had to choose a date, by the end of May, I want to get 9.1 out there and let it sit there for a while, and then look at what I could do either for a 9.2 or maybe a 10. The features that are coming in C# 14, none of them seem like they're going to affect rocks, at least not right now. I may use some of this stuff internally. That's a possibility, but I don't think it's going to, I don't have to react to something now being there. Like default interface members or static abstract members, or doing an anti-constraint with ref structs. Sometimes those things require me to change how things are working. I don't think right now, I don't see anything with .NET 10 or C# 14 coming in that will do that, but there's always new analyzers coming in, or new things that are added that are somewhat unexpected. So we'll see. So the plan is to get this done end of May, and then see what the next release would be. All right. So with that, what I want to work on for the rest of this stream, and if I don't get done with it, that's fine, but I got to clean out my coffee maker again. It's been not making coffee as fast, and so I looked up, how do you clean a coffee machine? And they said, we got to decant it, and you basically mix in water with, is it vinegar, I think? And you let a whole pot run, and that kind of clears out any sediment or deposits that have been built up in your coffee machine, and then you run it clean twice. And I did that a month ago, and that definitely seemed to help. But I noticed this morning it was being really slow again. I may need to get a new coffee machine, and then make sure I have a schedule every month. Just make sure I do this clean out. And that's one thing I got to do with. We got a new dishwasher and a new stove, and I got to go look through the manuals and say, it says, maybe you should clean this out every month, or you should do this every 6 months or whatever. Just put that in my calendar so that I remember on a weekend or something like that. I do that with other things, like changing the filter in the the HVAC system. So I've got that set up to change every 2 months. I have a thing to notify me to look for the water softener, to put new salt in there. Just use technology. Use technology to remind me, hey, you got to change this, you got to do this. And then I'll make sure I have new stuff working well. Anyway, speaking of new stuff working well, Rocks doesn't work well as SetsRequiredMembers. So this is something I'm going to change. Oh yeah, I changed that. Okay. This is something I found when I updated all the packages, and one of the things that I'm referencing is this Elasticsearch. And on its query response type, it puts SetRequired SetsRequiredMembers on its constructor like what you see here. Let me zoom in a little bit. What's funny is that this attribute doesn't actually check to see if you have required members to set. Like if I have a property that has the keyword required on it, it doesn't care. It just says, I'm going to do this. Well, the consequence of putting this attribute on a constructor is that any derived class has to put SetsRequiredMembers on its constructor. Now in Rocks, I actually do that if, and this is a long feature discussion, but if you actually have required properties on your type that you want to mock, I will put SetsRequiredMember on the constructor, and I also add in an extra parameter when you do instance, when you call instance on the mock, and I pass in this thing I call constructor properties. And so these are emitters and also required properties. Even if you're not mocking them, they can be non-virtual. It doesn't matter. You have to set them on construction. And so Rocks creates all this stuff for you just to make it simple to say, yep, you got some things on your type, on your instance that you want to set on construction. And so this object, this synthesized object, will let you set all those, and then it will set it on the mock type for you. Yay, great, wonderful, that all works. But in this case, like I said, the target type doesn't have anything required. And so I don't even bother to think about putting this on there, but you have to. If the calling constructor has SetsRequiredMembers on it, you have to put that on the constructor you have on your type on your derived type when you're calling the base type. That's just the way it is. So, and the way Rocks works is it only generates the constructors for each constructor that's callable in the derived type. So maybe the type has a private constructor for whatever reason. I won't generate a constructor for that because my derived type can't see it. But if I can see it, I generate an instance call that will turn around and create the new mock targeting that constructor. So long story short, very, very long story short, is that if you want to mock something that has a constructor that has SetsRequiredMembers on it, you have to put SetsRequiredMembers on it. So you either do that, or if I have required properties on it, then I have to set it on there as well. So we'll see how long this takes. I already have this set up as in a branch. So the first thing, as always, is what do we do, folks? What do we do? By the way, if you are watching and you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. I would greatly appreciate it, as I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, so any new subscription helps. So thank you in advance for doing that. But as I always mention on a lot of my streams is, what do you do when you write new code? You write tests. You have to write tests. There's just no way. I say this so many times, especially with this project, but with anything I'm working on, you've got to write tests. There's no way I could write this project, this generator, without tests. It would be a nightmare to try to maintain this without tests. So, yeah, to say I'm a big advocate of tests is an understatement. All right, what would make sense to put this under? Is there like I do have a constructor test. Yeah, let's put it there. All right, so we're going to create test public static async task generate when constructor has sets required members async. All right. And so I already wrote this code to confirm that this is a working demonstration of the bug. Wait. There we go. Okay. All right, so let's do some copy pasta. Grab that. Put that there. change the name to required constructor. And then let's get our strings. Var. Okay, now I know this is going to fail. I don't want to go through the effort right now of running this test twice, getting the generated code in here, and then running again, see it fail, and tell me that this constructor must add this. I already know that. So what I want to do is just go through the code now and fix this, generate the code, and hopefully then it works. So let's do that. So somewhere within Rocks analysis, I have to be doing SetsRequiredMembers. Somewhere. I don't know where. So in the create and the make. So both of them are going to have to be done, which is fine. So right here is where I want to do this. Because it already is putting that there. I just need to have another check to say if the constructor has that attribute on it. So this is a constructor builder. Taking the type, we have the parameters. So I think what we're going to have to do is actually pass in a constructor model and not the parameters. And what this is doing is saying, well, if you don't have any constructors, then pass in an empty array of parameters, because you're saying I don't have any constructors, but I still need to generate an instance method. That's what this is doing, I believe, here. So the problem is all this is based on the fact that, well, what I could do is pass in the thing here and then say if, like, say constructor parameters are if the constructor is null, if not null, it's the constructor parameters, otherwise just the brackets, and then everything through that falls through. So let's do that. Take that out, constructor model. Is that a null? Why would that be null? That doesn't make any sense. We'll say constructor here. And then we're going to say var parameters is equal to constructor is not null. Except that will be that. There. Now, at least all that works. I didn't break anything. I broke something when I do this. Okay, but yippee, that's okay. So we have that now. But we still need a way to say on the model, what do we have on the model? We just have parameters. We may need to do more. We need to go deeper. I mean, I make these models to have as much as I possibly need it. As much as possibly needed. So when I create the model here, this is where I turn a method symbol into a model. And this is something just if you're ever writing generators. You don't want anything coming out of the for attribute with metadata name that is referencing your semantic model, your symbols, even your syntax tree. You want to transform those things into a model that you own, because then it's the things that you look at, but they need to be equatable, because the pipeline, the next time something's run, it will say, well, what came out of your for attribute with metadata name call? Oh, you have this object. Is that one I've seen before? By equality, yes. I don't have to generate the code. And so it can say, it can do caching essentially and make sure that it doesn't go through the whole process of generating that code if you don't need to do it. So that's one of the reasons you make these models. So what I want to have here is something simple, basically to say requires sets required members attribute or something like that. So we could have here an internal bool requires sets required, God, I can't type, members attribute. And this would be a get. Okay. So now we have to change this to block body because we need to have some way to say it requires, right now it's false, but we need to actually figure out, well, how do we determine that? I doubt I already have an extension method on method symbol to say default constraints is unsafe, get constraints, get namespaces, match. Yeah. There is something up here. Where I look to see if it's obsolete. And I'm actually looking at all the types to see if they're obsolete. So where do I... So I could do something like this. And then the model, I could say var. Now this will be fun because I bet in a .NET Standard 2.0 project you can't. Oh, I'm going to need the compilation as well. You don't have that on the constructor, right? I don't pass that. No, I don't. Actually, maybe I... Oh, I don't pass it within the semantic model compilation. There we go. Yeah, that was a change I made a while ago so that I pass everything around everything else so that I can do stuff like this rather easily. Except now I want to say sets required members, but I can't do that. That's okay because we have polyfills. So let's go source.net. And then we'll just flop that in there. I don't think we have to worry about that. This is interactive host. That's not what I want. This. Yeah, this is the one I want. Okay. Except, can you give it to me without the line numbers? So we want sets required members at, let's just, no. Can you let me just highlight that so I get the actual name correctly? And then we'll just plop that. No, oh my God. I just said, can you do it without? And I've done this before. And so we'll come back here, we'll grab this. I don't know when this was introduced. Was it 8? To support the required keyword in C# and is not available in a version where it's not available. And then we just have to do that, do that. And then do I... Yeah, I just say it's internal. Because I'm not system private core lib, so I just do that. That. Okay, so now if I come back here, now you notice it picks it up. I think this should be enough to make sure that this actually works correctly. So now what we need to say is get we can just do that. That's enough. So what we can say here is constructor get attribute. Yep. What? There we go. And then we can say that, and we're done. Hopefully. So now we'll know if the constructor needs it. So now we can come back to the constructor builder and we can say if constructor requires or. What's the problem here? Oh. And let's make that a little bit more explicit. There. So if you gave me a null constructor, that'll be false. Whatever that is will be false. You gave me a constructor and you told me that yes, this is needed. Doesn't matter what you did here. Okay. Because this is looking at constructor properties. That's a different thing. This should be looking just to say that this needs to be there, and so we'll put that there. Now, I needed to do that here and here. So if I take this, plop that in there, which will now make this constructor model constructor. And then we can do that. So all that falls through. And now if we say, does this at least build? Okay, so we need to change that. Okay. That all succeeds. All right, so now let's clean some things out here so I don't have as much crap on my screen. Now let's generate this and see what happens. This will be a couple of failures because I need to actually get the code that it's generating. Okay. Oh. Well, that ain't good. Okay, somewhere it's failing, obviously. That is weird. There's a virtual object here, so that is... Oh! I made this example while I was in that interim period of having Rock's runtime. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. Okay. Hey, now look at that. It's amazing. If you write correct code, then you actually, get correct code. It's funny how that works. All right, do it again. Actually, I want to check something here real quick. I should be able to see here. Yep. See the SetsRequiredMembers there? So now it does do it. But that ain't right. Oh, no, it is. It is, because that will default to calling the no argument constructor in this case. And that's the one that has it. So yeah, that is correct. Okay. All right. By the way, if you're wondering how I'm getting this to come up, I learned that if you have the red X in focus with your cursor, you can hit Alt-1. That brings up this, but this window sucks. And so I've just learned I can tab, and then you notice that it went over the dock pop-up. If I hit enter when it's there, that's what brings that up. Keyboard shortcuts. Do I really care about whatever? Okay, so now we should. It might fail because I think I have too much space there. We'll see. Yeah, let's see what it's complaining about now. Is it that last line of code there? Yeah, it shouldn't have that space there. Okay, that's what I thought. What do we do now? Hey! Passes. Let's run it on all the tests. The unit tests. Just so I don't break anything else that I was expecting. Or how did I... No, that didn't make any sense. I don't want to break anything that's unexpected. That I broke something somewhere else that I didn't realize. Oh, it works. Yippee, drive constructor. I do. You know what I should do here? I should put in a test that says create when sets required members exists. So now we're going to have using this. And then we put that on the constructor. And so in this case, but then down here, we say it's true. Now, one thing that just came to mind. When I create the model here, All I'm doing when I gain the parameters is I'm just doing this. I don't necessarily look. I think the parameter model tells you. I thought I put it is required on it. I thought I saw that. Never mind. We'll leave it this way for now. So now if I run my 2 tests here, they pass. So one other test I want to write is in integrations. Oh, that was great. Catastrophic failure. Oh, I should play this VOD back later and get to that point and just put that in Blue Sky or something like that. Catastrophic failure. Okay, so do I have like a constructor? No, I don't. Oh, I do have class constructor tests. So what I could have here is I could make a public class required constructor. And unfortunately, the integration tests I don't include a reference to, that's interesting. Maybe I should do that. Side note, maybe add the rocks. What is it? No, I don't want to save it. Come here. What's it called? Completions. To rocks. Well, why don't I just do it now? I mean, yeah, let's just do that. Why not? Why not? Why not? I should have scenarios. So if I come into here, and I already have a file called mock definitions. So I should be able to say, down there is that. Up here, well, we just can do that. And then we can add a project reference to completions. Like that. Now, when I do public virtual void do required, it doesn't matter what the name is. I don't care. But I put sets required members like that on the type. Okay. Now, if I say, well, it might not have picked it up. So let's actually close this down and start it up again because reasons. What are you going to do this time? It's not adding it. I was hoping that would work because this doesn't have any reference to any other project within here. It's separated. And mock definitions, yeah. That's kind of sad. Let's just build this and see. Maybe it's being a slight bit twitchy and not. Okay. Huh. It's not picking it up. Well, that was disappointing. Not sure why it's not. Let's just go into here and class required constructor. All right, so now we have that, and it generated. And yeah, you're complaining, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Test public static void create required constructor. So now we can say var expectations is equal to a new class required constructor create expectations. We're just going to say that we expect on the methods that do required is called. Var mock is equal to expectations instance, mock do required, and expectations verify. And that should work. All right, cool. One more thing to do on this. Let's close this down. Open it up again. I know you shouldn't have to do this anymore, but for some reason you do. We're going to run all of our tests first. Unit integration. And then when those are done, run the... Actually, we can do that right now, because while those are running, this is just a console app, and we can run that while the tests are running. Because this takes about 4 minutes to run. So if you're watching, you have any questions, feel free to put them in chat on anything. Well, related to coding, I guess. But I do have a little bit of a pause time now to wait for all these tests to finish. The code generation app that's running should also pick up the fact that the thing we found in Elasticsearch is now fixed, hopefully. All right, so all of our unit and integration tests passed. Now we just have to wait for this thing to pass. So while that's going, my upcoming stream schedule, I will probably be doing another coding stream tomorrow morning. And I don't know exactly which thing I'm going to work on. I'm assuming this is fixed, which is a bad assumption, but if it is, I'm probably going to work on this repository thing tomorrow morning first, and then, well, let's go look at milestones. That's really what I care about. If this is gone, then I'll do the repository. Maybe I'll do this one live as well. This one I will need to. This validate, maybe. We'll see. We'll see if I do that one. And it's funny with the SetRequired's thing is that I've never run into that case before. You know, I never thought I would have to. I thought you only put that on when you had required members. I didn't realize that the compilation of stuff doesn't enforce that you have required members. It just says, well, if you put that on there, you're saying you set everything, and it doesn't do any analysis on your type itself, which is kind of interesting. And so for people to, you know, people do things that I don't think about or I don't expect. And that's why I have this big project with a whole bunch of NuGet packages referenced in it. I mean, I just find packages on NuGet that have a decent amount of traffic on them, and I'll just throw it in here. And even if it picks up like only 10 or 15 types that it could mock, it's been good to exercise things like these. Really do some stuff with native things that I didn't expect. There's one up here. It's got a kind of an odd name. Where is it? Once I see it, I'll be like, yep, that's what it is. Is it R3? It might be that one. But there's one that somebody's doing a whole bunch of like, maybe it's libharmony or language extend core. It's just, they're doing some really wild things with trying to do like functional language programming in C#, and they do a whole bunch of naming things that are kind of odd and don't follow standards. But that one uncovered a decent amount of bugs when I added that to Rocks. So, and it seems like every time I update, there's always something that's added in these new projects that I did not expect. So that's why I have this app. It's really good to find things that I just did not expect. What I really should do is like look through the C# like compiler or .NET and go, what are some things you could do that might break me? But that's a big thing to do. Should be close. Did that actually fix what I was just seeing? Yep, it did. And I know it did because there's no red here. Sorry if you're colorblind. If I find errors, I will list them out here. And so what I was getting was I was getting 4 errors to show up on that type. And they don't exist anymore because we're doing the right thing. So this is fixed. I will do the merge and update the changelog off camera, but that is another bug squashed. So with that, I am going to finish the stream. Again, tomorrow I'm going to do another live coding stream in the morning. And do some more stuff in Rocks to try to get this milestone completed. I will probably be doing some game streams. One this afternoon that will probably be a little bit short, but I want to do a little bit more with Hollow Knight. That's the game I'm playing right now. And do a stream or 2 of that tomorrow as well. So with that, I'll stop the stream. Thank you all for watching. If you're watching for the first time, or if you haven't subscribed to the channel just yet, please do so. I would greatly appreciate it. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers is my first goal. So any new subscription helps. So thank you in advance for that. And hopefully I'll see you in a future stream. Thank you all for coming. Take care, and I hope to see you in the future.